thank you for your attention and time, and welcome to the most important session of all, which is the question of how do we use vaccines to address chronic human disease. So I'm here with Mei Mei Hu, the CEO of Vaxxinity. She and her co-founder Lou Reese, who's the executive chairman, are building a company that has the potential to have the largest impact on humanity of any medical company out there. Full disclosure, I'm very proud to be a co-founder and vice chairman of the organization, so I am most definitely biased, but also enough knowledgeable to know the potential. Mei Mei. May I call you Mei Mei?
Yes, Peter.
Talk to us. Most people know vaccines as something they use to vaccinate against childhood disease, against a viral infection, but people don't realize that vaccines can also be used to protect against chronic disease. Would you speak to that?
So let's take a step back for a second and think about vaccines in the sense of being the most prolific and impactful medicine to date already, right? If you look at 100 years ago, if you were a kid and you were born, you had a 25% chance of not making it to your first birthday, and 50% chance of being dead by the time you were in puberty. With the advent of vaccines, we doubled our life expectancy over the last 100 years. And the reason is we not only were able to prevent these infections that you're talking about, but we were able to do it en masse throughout populations. And that's been one of the key differentiators of vaccines in medicine.
Vaccines, most people don't think about it, but vaccines are at a price point unlike most medicines.
Yeah, you look at COVID pandemic as an example, and there are billions of vaccines that were actually affordable to everyone in the world. So we're talking tens of dollars, things that anyone in almost any country can afford. That is why they were so impactful for the last century in getting us to where we are today. So the challenge today is we are now dying of chronic diseases. So chronic diseases account for 70% of deaths.
Examples of chronic disease.
Heart disease, diabetes, stroke, asthma, Alzheimer's, anything that is really caused by your body's own production or overproduction or misfolding of something. So we have external diseases like COVID, viruses, infections, and then we have chronic diseases now that are really caused by ourselves. Because the body's smart. You're an evolutionist. It's we're meant to procreate and then die.
Yes, pass on our genes and then not consume the resources that our next generation would use.
Exactly. Little do they know that actually resources are abundant.
Yes.
So we can keep going. So today we have a different problem, and it's of chronic diseases. Now, we as humans have been, incredibly innovative. So we've developed this new class of drugs called antibodies, and they're almost magical against chronic diseases, right? They're 7 of the top 10 selling drugs in the world.
So most people would know them as monoclonal antibodies.
Yeah.
And so what is a monoclonal antibody?
So a monoclonal antibody is a very complex drug that's produced and grown in a giant vat in a bioreactor outside, and then used to, treat particular problems and pathways in your system. So again, 7 of the top 10 selling drugs are monoclonal antibodies, and they're incredibly effective and safe. But the problem is that they're limited in their applicability because they're extremely expensive and difficult to administer. So most of them are either via IV infusion or you have to inject yourself. So they're a pain in the butt. And the average,
literally.
They're literally, yes. and most of the time they have to be refrigerated.
Yes.
I think, and the average cost of a new monoclonal antibody in the United States is over $100,000 a year.
Wow.
So that's just impractical for the world.
So how many monoclonal monoclonal antibody drugs are there in the marketplace?
There are over 100, so there's over 150 types of these antibody drugs.
And just full disclosure, I use one. I use a monoclonal antibody called Repatha, which I inject every 2 weeks into my belly fat right here, or my thigh. And this monoclonal antibody costs me about $10,000 a year, but it drops my LDL levels, the bad cholesterol, it drops it by 50%. And I go from the red zone to the green zone. But it's expensive, and again, it's every 2 weeks. Like on Monday, I'm gonna go back and inject this. But if I'm gone on a month of travel and it's got to be refrigerated, it's difficult. I can afford it, but that's an example of a monoclonal antibody produced in a vat someplace up in New York, and then I buy it in 5 ml aliquots.
And you're able to buy it.
And I'm able to afford it, yes.
So even though 80% of the world right now is vaccinated against all sorts of other vaccine-preventable diseases, less than 1% of the world has access to monoclonals today.
Yeah, the most advanced. It's a first world rich person's drug.
For sure.
Yes.
Now there have been attempts to make them cheaper through biosimilars and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, they are what they are.
Yeah.
And it's the same process. So maybe you can make it a little bit cheaper, in different parts of the world, but they're still expensive, and they're going to be the last line treatment. So that's where we come in, or the idea of what if you could bring the efficiency of vaccines that we all know and give our kids, but we now apply them to chronic diseases.
So let's define what a vaccine is and what it does. So you go to the pharmacy or your doctor and you get vaccinated. You get a small injection of something into your arm. What is a vaccine and what does a vaccine do?
So by its simplest definition, a vaccine is just something that stimulates your immune system to have a response.
Okay.
So hence the COVID vaccine, right? We get boosted with COVID vaccine, and that tells our body to develop antibodies that will protect us from a COVID infection. So with chronic diseases, what we want to do is we want to give you a vaccine that teaches your body to have an immune response that develops antibodies, something like a monoclonal antibody, but to different targets. So like a target of PCSK9 to lower your cholesterol, a target of aggregated amyloid to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's, a target of CGRP to prevent migraines.
So to give the example, we talked about a monoclonal antibody, again, the top selling drugs that cost thousands of dollars. They're produced in a vat and then you inject them. But the concept is, what if instead of having the monoclonal cost $10,000 produced and you have to inject it every 2 weeks, what if you could use a vaccine to get your own immune system to produce the same antibody for free, and that lasts for many months?
You got it. What if you could turn your body and everyone's body here into its own little bioreactor and antibody factory?
So is this theory or is this practice?
So it's being implemented right now. So we at Vaxxinity have developed a vaccine platform over the last couple decades, in fact, and it's been in 8 clinical trials thus far, and shown that we can, in fact, get your body to produce antibodies against almost anything that we want it to.
And anything against even internal targets in the body. Now, but isn't that going to cause an autoimmune reaction?
So that's the thing that you want to look out for, and that's the thing that we've overcome. So your body's super smart, right? When you're growing up, your body gets trained, and probably through your teenage years, it gets trained to know what to attack and what not to attack. And one of the things that it doesn't want to attack are things inside itself, right? That would cause autoimmune disease. So we know, and that's something that we develop over time called immune tolerance. So that's why most other vaccine technologies, they have trouble overcoming this immune tolerance. Okay, if you give someone a vaccine through traditional technology that's trying to get it to develop an antibody against something internally, it won't. Your body's smart, it doesn't want to do that. So that's where we've kind of tweaked the system, tweaked our technology to be able to overcome that challenge. And the trick is you have to do it safely. So the analogy I use is we put a sheep in wolf's clothing. So wolf is something that's outside. It's everyone knows that you want to stay safe from it, and the sheep is yourself. You want to protect it, right? So with most other technologies, you put the sheep in, and it knows it's not going to attack it. But we want your body to develop antibodies, in this case, to prevent disease. So we clothe it in just enough of wolf's clothing to make it look like something that's foreign and that your body should protect itself against. And that's what sends the signal to say, like, hey guys, look, we got a wolf in our midst. Activate all the defenses and begin producing these antibodies.
So you mentioned Vaxxinity has a number of vaccines against a number of the top chronic diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, but there's one in particular which you're here in the region talking about, which is the number one killer of everybody here. It's the number one killer in MENA, and it's always been assumed that you can't protect against it in this fashion. Can you talk to us about what it is and what the promise of this vaccine is?
So heart disease is the number one killer in the world. In the US, here, almost everywhere. It kills 18 million people a year. That's 50,000 people a day. And it continues to be the leading killer. And the biggest travesty is that we know how to prevent it. It is not a hypothesis, it is proven. And the way you do it is you reduce the cumulative exposure to LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, over time. That's it. There have been millions and millions of patient years to prove this. That's why we're on statins, So we know how to do it. And frankly, we have tools to help us do it as well. We have statin drugs, and we have this new class of drugs called PCSK9 antibodies. But the problem is we don't do it today, and thus it is still the number one killer. And that's what we're trying to solve.
So the product that is going into human trials now would be a vaccine that does what? How often? How cheap could it be?
Yeah, so what's the goal, right? We want to lower LDL cholesterol from whenever you have elevated, so that you have reduced cholesterol, which reduces your overall risk of cardiovascular event. So over 85% of all cardiovascular events can be prevented if we lower cholesterol early and long enough. So what we're trying to do, and what a vaccine approach should do, and what anyone should want to do, is figure out a way to do that in a large population. Okay. Let me take you through a patient year. You have high cholesterol. You go to your doctor. The first thing they're going to do is put you on a statin. Guess what? Statins are a pain in the butt. They're a pill a day, and you don't feel sick while you're taking it. So after 1 year out, over 50% of people that are prescribed statins, so these are people who need statins, are no longer taking them. Not only are they not compliant, they're just not taking them. Without taking a drug, it will not be effective. Okay? So then...
That reminds me, I've got my pills to take.
So then, so now you need statins, you're not taking them, and a few years go by, and God forbid you have some sort of cardiac event.
Yes.
All right? Now you've had something, and now you should be on statins again. Again, 50% of people, even after they have a cardiac event, 1 year out, are not taking the drug. It's incredible. So there are some people that, even with statins, cannot get their cholesterol to a low enough place. That's when they go to this next class of drugs called PCSK9. And I think that's what you're on. Yeah,
so I'm on that monoclonal antibody at $10,000 a year, injecting myself every 2 weeks. It works amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's miraculous. It's expensive and inconvenient.
Right, so less than 1% of the population that needs it even has access to those antibodies, okay? So the problem with that is they're not reimbursable. You're paying out of pocket, most likely. Even though they're the most effective drug, they're difficult to take, and less than 15% of insurance, even in middle-income countries, will reimburse for it. So medicines are not effective if they're not taken.
Right.
Okay, so where does a vaccine come in? So the idea is, what if we could teach your body to produce these same antibodies for free and lower your cholesterol, but instead of taking it every 2 weeks, you go in maybe twice a year for a shot, and maybe instead of the cost of $10,000, it's actually less than the cost of a statin.
Tens of dollars?
Let's say $50.
$50.
Yeah. So what if we could say, we can vaccinate the world, lower their cholesterol, and reduce heart disease across the globe? What if we, 1 to 4 times a year for $50 per patient, we could eliminate heart disease?
That would reduce a lot of suffering. I think the number is heart disease kills 40% more people than cancer does.
Yeah.
In women, 3 times the rate of deaths from heart disease and breast cancer. It's pretty amazing.
It is still the number 1 killer. And I think I said this before. The biggest travesty is we know how to prevent it.
Yeah.
So that's where Vaxxinity comes in. But that's just where the idea of vaccines and democratizing health. We know what to do. Why aren't we doing it? We need to make it more affordable, and we need to make it more convenient. We need to make it so that people don't have to change their entire lifestyle to be healthy. We need to make sure that we make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard.
So Vaxxinity is a U.S. NASDAQ-listed company. When do you expect we'll have this product on the market? What's the timeline for this?
So it's actually relatively quick. We've done all our animal testing. We're actually going into human trials imminently, so in the next 6 months. And then the development pathway is actually quite accelerated for something like PCSK9, because there is a very measurable output. Does your cholesterol go down or not? And there's a very direct translation with whether your cholesterol goes down to whether you're going to have a heart attack or what your risk of a heart attack is. So I'd say the development timeline is about 3 years for the whole program, which means that within 5 years, we have the possibility to have a widely available solution for heart disease.
I mean, I just wonder what the economic impact population-wise for something like that would be. I mean, it's hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars of benefit to society. There's an element of Vaxxinity that you and Lou Reese focus on, which is different than traditional pharmas. And pharmaceutical companies historically have looked at maximizing profits because they've made investments of tens of billions of dollars over decades they have to recover.
Yeah.
And it's business, and I get it. But I think there's an ethos to Vaxxinity which is different, which is worth pointing at. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's enabled by our technology. Okay, so we have a mission to democratize health. And that means get the best medicine to everyone and make it accessible to anyone that needs it. But we have that conviction because we have the technology to do it. Most biotech companies now, what they do is the business model is you focus on small indications, like orphan indications. So maybe you develop a drug that can serve 100,000 people, and you charge a lot of money for it, okay? Because you need to charge that money in order to recoup your
I
investment.
mean, a CAR T therapy could be $500,000 to $1 million. Gene therapies in the market are $1 million.
Yeah, this is $1 million per patient.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they're expensive, and the population that they're serving is small, so they have to charge that in order to recoup, right? So we have a technology that can be available to the masses and scaled up. So the number game switches. So instead of charging a lot, we can charge a little, maintain the margins, but serve a broad base.
Like hundreds of millions of people.
Like hundreds of millions and billions of people.
Yeah.
So this technology, maybe I'll give you a little background. It actually came out of Rockefeller University. It's mentored by 2 Nobel laureates. And the first commercialized application was actually in animal health. So it was developed for a different pandemic, something called foot and mouth disease. I don't know if you guys ever remember this, but in the UK there's a big foot and mouth disease outbreak, and they had to burn lots of cows. So we were asked by a national government, can you develop a vaccine for this?
Which national government?
Actually, the government of Taiwan. They had a big livestock outbreak there. So we did, and it was successful. And then we entered the largest market in the world, in Asia. And even though we were 6th to market, so it was already fully saturated, and everyone who said, you know what, you don't have to bother going in there, it's already saturated, the products are working, and we said, no, we want to try, like we're safer and we're more efficacious, like don't worry about it. Well, we want to be commercial, so we went in there, and it turns out within 3 years, we captured 50% of the market. And it was because it was safer. And you know what? If you're a farmer, you do not want your livestock to get sick. Because if they get sick, that means that they don't eat. If they don't eat, that means they don't convert into food, which means you lose money when it goes to the slaughterhouse.
So we've all been educated about vaccines over the last 2 years, for good or bad reasons. And we hear about mRNA vaccines, which require super cryogenic storage and transport. What kind of vaccine is Vaxxinity manufacture, and what are the attributes of it?
So we're a platform for mass distribution. So we do require cold storage, but normal refrigeration. So anywhere that you can get a cold Coca-Cola or fresh flowers, you can deliver our vaccine. You can do that same infrastructure. We're working on technologies to be able to lyophilize them or send them at room temperature, but right now it's normal refrigeration. But the good news is, like I said, 80% of the world is vaccinated. There is already an infrastructure to deliver these type of products all around the world.
And you've been delivering the animal vaccine versions of this in rural China to farmers for a decade.
Yeah, we've been a key element of the food security in China. And I can tell you, I've been to some of these farms. It's like they have less infrastructure than most places. So if we can get there, these vaccines can get almost anywhere.
The category of vaccine is?
So it's called a synthetic peptide. There's no biological agent involved in these vaccines. Synthetic peptides are basically made out of little amino acid building blocks. All right, they're very, very small. They're very safe. They're inert by nature. We've just figured out a way to mimic natural biology with these synthetic peptides. So, if you're going after, so for the animal health vaccines, foot and mouth disease is highly virulent. All right, this is BSL-3. No one wants to have it. In fact, in the US, there's only one place in the world that even has this virus, and it's on an island because it's so virulent. So we've manufactured these vaccines in China in the middle of Shanghai City because there's no biological hazard.
What I'd like to do, because we have a manageable audience, is open it up for any questions that you might have. I'll repeat the question if you have one. Lou, I welcome you to add any additional points you might desire, but this is not your typical vaccine, right? We're not talking about vaccinating against, though there's a COVID-19 vaccine as well the company has, but this is vaccinating to repair the mistakes that your body gets during aging. As we grow older, our bodies were never designed to live past age 30. And so how do you rein it back in, and how do you get your body to operate within its normal specs?
Yeah, maybe I could use another example.
Please.
Talk about something in brain health, all right? Because I'm looking at it, it's the future of vaccines. What are the global human health needs?
So what are the future of vaccines, Mei Mei?
Yeah, so our friend, Ken, did a big survey at a massive financial firm, and they said, what is the thing that you're most afraid of, right? And this was actually in the middle of the pandemic. And guess what? It was not COVID. It was Alzheimer's. People were overwhelmingly afraid of Alzheimer's. Now, Alzheimer's, like heart disease, is one of these diseases, like most chronic diseases, that don't just happen overnight. They build up over decades before you ever see a symptom. So just like you don't just have a heart attack, your arteries get clogged and stuff like that until you have a blockage. Alzheimer's takes decades to build up also. So starting when you're 40, 30 even, your brain is producing these proteins, and they begin to clump, misfold, clump, and then start to create a little havoc in your brain. But it's not until you reach a certain threshold that you actually begin seeing symptoms of early cognitive decline. So we imagine today vaccines are preventing things like chicken pox in our children, right? What if you can think of vaccines in a preventative way for stuff like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's? That's where I think the future of vaccines is going to be. We're going to be preventing these chronic diseases before they actually start.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of sick care, which is where we are now, right? You get sick, then we treat you. Why can't we use vaccines to actually deliver health care? So one of the things with Alzheimer's, for instance, is there was just a recent approval, or a recent readout from a monoclonal antibody that showed for the first time definitively that with this antibody, you can slow the decline in cognitive, decline in Alzheimer's patients. That's great, all right? But that means they might give you 6 months to a year. What if you started taking that 5 years before? That would actually give you many, many more years of healthy functioning before you ever got the symptoms. So that's where I see the future of vaccines. Now, what is necessary to enable vaccines? Life is an ecosystem, right? It's not just one tool. You actually need different tools. So one of the things that I think is also happening that will impact the future of vaccines is diagnostics. So ways to see when you're at risk of a disease. LDL cholesterol is a great one for cardiovascular health.
Easy to measure.
Exactly. We need the same things for the brain. And so that's where all these genetic biobanks, these diagnostics, these biomarker companies, they are part of this ecosystem that is delivering these tools so that in the future, within 10 years, I bet you go to the doctor and you get a blood draw, and instead of just seeing cholesterol, you say, okay, these are my brain health metrics.
Yes.
You know what? You have a little too much amyloid, Peter, and you have a little too much tau. I need to get you on something to slow that accumulation down so that I can manage it and prevent and lower your risk of having Alzheimer's 10 years down the line.
It's preventative instead of reactive. We have a question here, sir. Or if you just talk, I'll repeat it.
My name is Adam Jackson from FII Institute. My question is, what's the relationship between stem cell research and vaccines? Is there a relationship? And if there isn't, could there be a relationship in the future where you simply take a vaccine, which then does almost stem cell repair automatically in your body?
So today there's they're both pioneering technologies, and there's not a direct relationship today because vaccines work with your immune system, and which is more complicated than just a cell, but there absolutely can be potential in the future. So the thing with vaccines is it can develop antibodies to target specific pathways. So if we can find pathways that can be activated in the future that will involve stem cells, there may be some complementary function. Now, the beauty of vaccines is they're complementary to most other types of drug forms. So vaccines can be used in conjunction with antibodies, with small molecules, with other injectables, and so it can be used on top of or in addition to stem cell medicine. So one of the idea of vaccines is, why not go first line? So if you have a disease, you know what? Right now, let's say I have a migraine. My first line treatment is going to be take something called triptans. I don't know if anyone here has migraines, but they're a pain in the butt. I mean, well, literally they're a pain. But the medicine is not very good, okay? But we force ourselves to go through all those types of medicines to get to the really good, more expensive medicine. What if you gave someone a vaccine up front? Maybe not everyone responds to it, but that's okay. No one responds to everything, but at least you have a baseline, and then on top of that, if you need rescue meds, you take that, or if you need supplemental meds, you take supplemental antibodies. I could see vaccines and stem cell therapy having that type of relationship where you have a first-line treatment that's extremely accessible, and then if you need to augment it, you go through the next line that may be a little more expensive, right, and more personalized, but practically speaking, it becomes a personalized medicine regimen for you. So,
I'd love to keep the questions going. Is there another question here that someone might want to ask? Yes, please. The young lady over here in front.
yeah,
There's another microphone coming. Go ahead. No, can you bring her the microphone? Thank you.
Hello. Oh, okay. And now this is working. Hi, I'm Nita Madhav from Ginkgo Bioworks, and I had a question that's more along the lines of infectious disease vaccines. I was curious if some of the new technologies out there could make vaccines, especially for flu, for example, to be more efficacious. I was wondering, there's all the trend now towards a universal vaccine, and so I was curious your thoughts on that.
Well, there are a lot more people working on infectious diseases. There's all sorts of things that can make things more universal. One is just studying of the actual biology of viruses, right? Can you identify the conserved regions? Can you develop epitopes for those conserved regions? So there's a lot of more basic discovery. And then in terms of universality, there's the idea of increasing cross-reactivity of the antibodies that you develop, and the potency of those antibodies. So yes, but it can be done in many different ways. It could be from the strength of your adjuvant. Can you improve your overall potency of the response that you have, versus breadth? There may be technologies that actually for infectious agents can increase the polyclonal nature of your response. That would give you bigger breadth when attacking a virus, or finding different epitopes. So, like I said, we at Vaxxinity are more focused on chronic diseases, but if you want, happy to put you in touch with folks that could explore infectious diseases more with you.
Other questions? Yes, please. We have another question right here.
The industries?
Yeah, there's a microphone right there.
Thank you. What about, just out of curiosity, the industries that would profit out of the people who have these chronic illnesses, but who wouldn't really need? Like, you see all these pills that Dr. Diamandis just took. So, for example, the industries that manufacture these pills would be at a situation of loss, if you want, if people were to start taking your vaccine. Do you feel like they would oppose you? You would get some opposition or something like this?
Listen, I'm gonna take this on first, and I'll pass it to Mei Mei. A chronic disease, by definition, is one that doesn't go away, and we see this in different parts of society, including medicine, where, unfortunately, it's in the interest of companies, and I'm a capitalist. I've started 26 companies, and I love building businesses. However, if you've got a business that is preying on something for decades, rather than investing in fixing it and curing it, I think that's an immoral approach to strategy. So if we are able to crush companies that are, by preventing the disease in the first place, God bless.
I like to think that most people are trying to do good and do things for the right reasons. And I don't want to say that vaccines are the silver bullet, because they're not, right? They won't work for everyone. They won't solve everything. They won't prevent every disease. And so life is a combination of lots of things, right? Like, if we wanted to be healthy and prevent most of these diseases, we'd eat better, we'd exercise, and we'd sleep a lot.
Yes, something we're not doing here at the event.
Right? But because we have the lifestyles that we want to live, we have drug interventions to help, and we have supplements to improve, so to enhance our immune systems, to enhance our natural functions. So I don't see it as much as replacing certain industries, although of course we will be displacing some, but that's the nature of innovation, right? Innovation is about progress. And if you don't innovate, it's like Lou was talking to me about the Stonehenge, right? There are all these people who work with stone. Well, when iron came around, you could move to iron, or you could keep working with stone until everyone moved to iron, and then you were the last person that worked with stone. So, this is the natural evolution. And I'm just showing you one path of where I think the future of healthcare is going to be and what the role of vaccines can play in that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mei Mei. Other questions? Lou, would you care to add a little commentary on what you've heard? Please, Lou Reese is co-founder and executive chairman of Vaxxinity.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I have a tendency to talk too much, so just tell me to shut up if I start to bore you. I wake up every day, and I talk to people all around the world, just like all of us do. And the thing that I find people looking for a lot of the time is purpose. So they do the things they should do. They wake up, they put on their shoes, they brush their teeth, they go to work, they take care of their kids. But you ask, so many people, are you happy with what you do with your life? And they say, no, what do you mean? I have a job. I go to work. And I am blessed and cursed with never having that problem. So I wake up at, whatever stupid hour in the morning, not enough sleep always. And I know that I was put here, and my purpose on this planet right now is to eliminate as much unnecessary suffering as possible. And what we're trying to do here, and what we're doing actually here, what we've proven in billions of animals around the world, what we've proven in thousands of humans around the world, 8 different clinical trials across broad different indications, is that for the first time in human history, we can actually make the best medicines go from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid at the same time. We don't have to have the people just with the most money, just the 1%, getting the best drugs first. We can have the best drugs available in sub-Saharan Africa, in India, in Riyadh, and in Geneva at the same time. And to me, that is a moral imperative. That's the reason that we do this. And it's not hypothetical. This is something that we're actually doing. And I believe that fundamentally that's the purpose. I tell people, if we were sitting in the same room 700 years ago, the most expensive thing on the planet was available to less than 1%, and it was a book. And the reason was the same 1% had to write those by hand. There weren't copies. You didn't share a copy with your friend. You didn't email them an Audible. These things were the most expensive thing on the planet. More expensive than gold, more expensive than salt, more expensive than the things that have caused the wars of the world. And a single simple invention, the printing press, reduced the cost by 5,000-fold. This is the printing press of biologic drugs. They're currently only available to less than the 1% around the world. We can print these for a fraction. I'm talking less than 1,000th of the cost. We can distribute them from sub-Saharan Africa to India to Southeast Asia to Central America to literally to Riyadh and Geneva at the same time. No one's ever tried that. And I believe that this will not only change the direction of health for humankind, but I can't think of a greater thing to eliminate unnecessary suffering. So I feel blessed and privileged to be here, and blessed and privileged to be working every day on this project. And our commitment, and Mei Mei is tireless. Our commitment is literally, we're going to do this. It's going to have this amazing impact, and it's our blessing to be on the journey. So I think that's all I got.
Thank you, Lou. I invite all of you to stick around and speak to Mei Mei Hu and Lou Reese, and thank you guys for the work that you're doing. And excited to. I'll close on one last question, which is, what is the? Why are you here in Saudi and in Riyadh? What's the mission?
Well, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer, not just in the U.S., but here. And we're here to build an army of compassion, of people that align with what we're doing and want to support it. And so we need several things to do that. We have the technology, we have the technical capabilities, but that's just one part of the chair, right? Of course, everyone needs resources to do it, but those things will follow. And really what you need is, you need infrastructure, So ability to run these studies, and then we need the cooperation of the governments, because ultimately they're going to be the ones that are our customers.
And deploy this at
To deploy
scale
this,
to
right?
keep their people safe. Yeah.
Yeah, this is ultimately the customers are the national health systems who are going to deploy this to their citizenry to try to prevent these diseases. And so that's why we're here in Riyadh, which is to share what we're able to do and to find partnerships of people who want to join, whether it's here in Riyadh or in their own regions, whether it's for cardiovascular disease or the moonshot of Alzheimer's.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mei Mei. Thank you, Lou. Thank you for
Thank
your
you,
work.
Peter.